Hello everyone, and welcome to our 50th GTAC Tech Talk webinar. Our webinar today will be on resolving waiting for signal messages in Security Center. Thanks for attending today. My name is Derek. I'm a technical training e-content specialist with Genetec, and I'll be presenting the webinar for you. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can just type them in the question box of the GoToWebinar console, and we'll get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. Today we have Cecilia from the Genetec Technical Assistance Center who will be answering your questions. I'd also like to give a shout out to Terry from the Technical Training Department who put together a great document to help troubleshoot waiting for signal issues. We'll have a link to Terry's document available after the webinar has been posted on the GTAP. Just in case we have to verify any information for any of your questions, we'll make a note of it and we'll get back to you via email as soon as we have an answer for you. All the questions and answers from the webinar will be posted on the GTAC Tech Talk section of the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal forums about a day or two after the webinar is finished. If you have any additional questions or comments on the webinar or the GTAC Tech Talk webinar series in general, you can post them in this section of the GTAP forum as well. All the videos from the previous webinars can also be found by going to the GTAP. Just need to go into the resources section here and then go into videos, and the top section should be the GTAC Tech Talk, and you can find all the videos in here. Now there's two ways that you can watch these. You can either stream it in a browser window by clicking on this icon right here, or you can download a zipped Windows media file by clicking on this second icon right here. If you'd like to receive emails concerning the latest additions to the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal, you can log on to the GTAP, go into the My Account section, and go under Email and Notifications. From the Notifications section down here, you can check the boxes on the subjects you're interested in and select how often you'd like to receive an email when there have been additions to these sections. To put a checkbox next to a subject, the frequency will have to be set to daily or weekly. Otherwise, the options below it will be grayed out. You can also edit your subscription to our two Genetec newsletters in the email subscription section from the same page. And of course, don't forget to hit the submit button on the bottom to save your changes. Now before we get into the troubleshooting steps and other information, I'd just like to touch on what we're trying to achieve with the webinar today. Now without a doubt, a waiting for signal issue is one of the most common problems we encounter in the field. We've got better tools to deal with it now, such as the in-tile diagnosis, but troubleshooting the problem in a logical, ordered fashion greatly helps save time and effort. We also want to give you a good idea of how video travels over the network, so you can get an idea where the trouble spot may be happening. Now in a small number of cases, the steps here will end up in a call to support for more assistance. At the very least, the troubleshooting done through this webinar and the supporting document will cut down on the time to resolve the case and getting the client back up and running. Alright, taking a look at the agenda, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at video redirection and how video streams travel over the network. Next, we'll talk about the basics of what's happening on the system when you're getting a waiting for signal message. After that, we'll start going into our troubleshooting, and based on the message on the screen and the state of the camera, we'll go into one of the troubleshooting sections after that. The first is when the camera is in an offline state and the icon is red. The second is when the camera is in a warning state and we have a yellow camera icon. And the last is the most common scenario and the one with the most troubleshooting, where the camera is online and the icon is white, but we're not getting any video in the tile. One of the new concepts in the GTAC Tech Talk webinars is the table of contents on the right here. So if you have to step away or you want to rewatch part of the video once it's posted, you can tell where we are in the presentation based on the table of contents and the marker that we've got right here. So let's start out by taking a look at how video is redirected in Security Center. This is a good foundation for knowing where the problem may come from later on. When we're taking a look at the streams and how video passes over the network, we'll consider both types of network traffic between the network points, both unicast and multicast. Now there are 4 major parts of the system that we need to consider when looking at how video traffic gets to the client workstation. The first is, of course, the camera or video encoder. If we're watching live video, this is the origin of the video stream. Next is the archiver, which is the source of the video stream if we're watching playback video. After that is the redirector. All archivers have a redirector included on the server, but you may also have servers that only act as redirectors. Now the video stream will go through as many redirectors as needed to get to the last point, which is the client workstation. In a typical network setup, you'll usually only have one redirector involved, which means we have 3 hops to get unicast traffic over the network. From the camera to the archiver, then to the redirector, and the last hop to the client workstation. Video sent from the archiver to its local redirector is always sent in unicast, and if multiple streams need to be sent out, this is always done by the redirector and not by the archiver. The redirectors are of course part of the media router. If you need to add an expansion server that will be used as a redirector, we can do this through the Properties tab of the media router role. So let's take a second to see how video gets through the system, including the part played by the media router itself. In our diagram, we are representing the unicast TCP stream in blue, the unicast UDP stream in green, and the multicast streams in red. Now here's our basic setup with our client, our media router role running on a server, one of our archiver servers, and our camera. We could also have other expansion servers present with redirector agents running on them. So the first step is the security desk client requests a video stream from a particular camera on the system. It does this through the media router, which passes the request on to the relevant archiver, which has the camera associated to it. The archiver acknowledges the request and passes the camera network information back to the media router. The media router determines the best path for the video to get to the client from the camera, and then advises the client how to contact the archiver. The archiver contacts the camera to request the video stream, and from here the camera will provide the video stream. If the network is fully capable of transporting multicast video streams, the camera will send the stream directly to the client workstation. Otherwise, we can look at a few different scenarios. For a network to be fully multicast compliant, all components must support multicast. This includes the camera or encoder hardware. If our network switches support multicast but the camera does not, we can have a case where the video comes in from the camera in unicast, sent from the archiver to its local redirector in unicast, and then the redirector sends the stream out in multicast to any clients requesting it. In this method, there's no further redirection needed as the multicast stream gets right to the client. Now, if the network only supports unicast UDP, the stream coming from the archiver and going to the local redirector will be sent out in unicast as many times as it has been requested. Now as well, it may require further redirection to reach the client workstations that requested it. The same thing happens when we're requesting recorded video, except the video source will be the archiver. The TCP requests will remain the same, but the video will come directly from the archiver and follow any multicast or unicast redirection as needed. Okay, so now we know how video should get from a camera or archiver to the client's workstation. Let's consider what happens when it doesn't get there. A waiting for signal message on the screen means we've had a breakdown somewhere in the lines of communication and the video cannot get through. If we look back at our 3 basic hops to get unicast video, we can see that this breakdown can happen on any of the machines that are along the way, such as the server holding the archiver role, or the endpoints such as the client workstation or the camera itself. The problem can also happen between them while the video is going over the network. There are different descriptions you can get when you have the waiting for signal message in a security desk tile, and this may give you some idea where the blockage is occurring. You can also run a diagnostic by clicking on the Diagnose button under the message, or hitting Ctrl-Shift-D and choosing the Show Video Stream Status link. This will display the hops that the video is going through to get to the client, and you may be able to see any problems on the way from here. For each point along the path, such as the archiver or the redirector, we can see the video coming in and the video going out. We can see if any packets have been dropped along the way, and what transport protocol is being used. If you expect the whole network to be fully multicast compliant, but you're seeing unicast traffic coming in, you know there may be a problem at that hop. This is a good way to narrow down your search for the problem, so you'll only have to consider the endpoints on that hop and the network in between them. If you don't see a clear problem from the diagnosis, the next step is to start breaking down the problem, which we'll take a look at in detail. We're going to start out the diagnosis of the problem with the initial error message we received in the tile when trying to view video. There are 3 messages that you may see below the initial waiting for signal message. The first one is connecting to media router. This indicates the problem is in the first step of getting video, where the client contacts the media router to ask for the video stream. If you're seeing this message, we know the problem is focused on the media router, and the request for the stream isn't even getting through, so there's no need to look at the archiver or the camera. The first thing you want to look at is the network the server hosting the media router is on. Is it the same network as the client and the cameras? And if it's not, you'll need to make sure that there's nothing blocking the traffic from going between the networks. So from this example here, we can see that the media router in the resources is using this server, and we can take a look in the network view, and we see which network that's on. And we can also see on the client, it's using a specific network, and it's not on the same network in this case. If you're seeing this on all of your cameras, take a look at the configuration of the media router. Check the database to make sure it's running by clicking on the Database Info button from the Resources tab of the media router role, and make sure the role has started and has a white text next to the role. Also take a look at the NIC the media router is using and make sure it's on the network you wish to use. You can see the NIC that's in use by the media router by clicking on the Advanced Mode button under the server list from the Resources tab of the media router role. It'll give you the extra field here, the network card, and we'll give you the option of changing the network card in use. Finally, connect to the server hosting the role and make sure the process is running. Go to the Task Manager, click on the Processes tab, and you should see a Genetec Media Router.exe process in the list here. If the media router configuration looks fine, the process is up and running, and there's no network issues, I would suggest opening a case on the GTAP or giving support a call to take a deeper look into the problem for you. Now, another message we might see under the waiting for signal message is connecting to archiver. This usually indicates there's a problem with the video getting from the camera to the archiver. Take a look at the network the archiver is on. So in this case we have our server here, and the network that the camera is on, which we can determine by the IP address here. If they're not the same, make sure there's no network restrictions or firewall rules that are keeping traffic from passing in between them. So in this example here, we can see again our server is under the head office network, and on that network we have this IP address range that's determined by the mask as well, and we can see that they're not on the same network. This is a 10.0.17 network, and this is looking for 10.0.1. So this is the case where we would need to check and make sure that there's nothing blocking any traffic going between the 10.0.1 network and the 10.0.17 network. Now, as well, take a look at the archiver role and make sure it's been configured properly and is up and running. Just like we did for the media router, make sure the role process is running. We should have the Genetec archiver.exe process running. Take a look as well and make sure the archiver role is using the correct NIC. From the Resources tab of the archiver role, take a look on the bottom here for the interface that and the network card that's being used, and the ports that are in use as well. So if everything checks out on the archiver, take a look at the camera icon under the archiver. If everything is okay on the archiver side, we should actually see a red camera icon. Now we'll take a look at what to do for cameras in red in just a few minutes as part of the next stage of the troubleshooting steps. Now our third message is just the basic waiting for signal with the show diagnostic information link below. Now when you see that message, there's usually a problem going from the archiver to its redirector, between redirectors, or from the last redirector to the workstation. As we did with the media router and the archiver, take a look at the networks the various redirection components are on, and make sure there's no problem sending traffic between them. If that looks fine or everything is on the same network, our next step is to take a look at the camera state. You should see either a yellow or white camera icon and the text here, and we'll take a look at what to do for each one of those in just a couple of minutes. Alright, so as we mentioned, the first camera state we're going to look at is if the camera has a red icon or the text is in red. Now the first thing to check are the other cameras that are associated with the same archiver. So we know which cameras we're having the problem with. We can go into the video task and take a look under the archiver and see if the other cameras are in red here as well. If it only affects one camera or encoder, like we have in this case here, take a look at the unit and make sure it's powered up, and make sure the network cable is properly attached. Otherwise, make sure the archiver role is up and running. If both the camera and the archiver are running fine, we may be looking at a communication issue between the cameras and the archiver. From here, we should take a look at the network equipment and settings. First of all, we want to make sure all the ports that are required by Security Center are open and have not been blocked by any firewalls or antivirus software on the network. Take a look at your NIC on the archiver as well, and make sure it's on the latest drivers. There could be a physical problem with a switch that's causing traffic not to go through. That's another issue we might see. And once everything on the network side has been verified, take a look at the camera again. So if the camera is no longer red, we'll check the security disk application and see if we get video. If we're still getting a waiting for signal message, we'll have to do a couple of different steps depending on if the camera is in yellow or if it's in white. We'll take a look at the steps for a camera in yellow in the next section and white in the last section. If the camera is still in red after checking the network components, try to ping the unit. If the ping doesn't go through, we still may be seeing something on the networking side. A Wireshark trace may be required at this point. Verify the previous network components, and if everything seems to be in order, I would recommend contacting the support department. When we can ping the unit, the next step is to try to view video from the unit's webpage which we can usually do by putting the IP address of the unit in the address bar of a web browser. At this point, if we can't see video from the web page, we should contact the unit manufacturer for further troubleshooting, as it seems there is a problem with the unit itself. If the video on the unit is fine, we should then check the firmware the unit is running on. Take a look at the supported device list on the GTAP for the unit, and check the unit's web page to verify the firmware it's running on. If the unit's running an older firmware, try to upgrade it to the one we have recommended on the GTAP. If the unit's on a newer firmware, we should probably contact the GTAC to check if it's okay to downgrade the firmware and see if there are any known issues with doing so. Of course, if we can't find the unit on the supported device list, we'll need to replace the unit with one that's been tested and is supported by the version of Security Center that you're using. If the unit happens to be tested and supported on a version of Security Center that's a later build than the one we have installed, we should upgrade the Security Center software when time permits. Now once we've verified all these steps, we should have the camera back up to either a yellow or white state. If it's still red, then give the support department a call and they can help you out. Alright, so let's take a look at what we can do if the camera icon is in yellow or a warning state. This means the archiver can connect to the unit, but there are issues detected. There are two main problems that may cause a camera to be in yellow. The first is if the camera has had multiple recording schedules assigned to it and the times on those schedules are in conflict. We can check that by looking at the camera's recording tab. If several cameras are inheriting their settings from the archiver, we should see all of them in yellow if that's the issue. Take a look at the schedules that have been assigned for recording and see if there are any conflicting times and recording modes. For instance, if we take a look at their schedules here that we had assigned, if we had one schedule that's set to record continuously daily between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., but then we assigned a second schedule here of the same type, so they're both daily schedules, and this one is set to record from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. during the same days, we would have an overlap, and the archiver wouldn't know what to do in that case. So to fix this, we should resolve the conflicts depending on what we really want in terms of the recording times, and if there are no conflicts, the camera will drop to the white state. Take a look at the video again from the security desk and see if we resolved the waiting for signal message. Otherwise, we'll have to move on to the last section for a camera with a white icon. The second problem that may cause a camera to be in the warning state is if we're seeing transmission lost events from the archiver. This is basically means that the archiver is able to communicate with the camera for command and control, but has not received any packets from the video stream in over 5 seconds. This could mean that the camera is either being overtaxed or there's a problem with the network connection between the camera and the archiver. When looking at the camera to see if it's trying to do too much, consider all streams that are being sent. A camera may be able to support 3 video streams and can do HD video at 30 frames per second, but it may not be able to send all 3 streams at that kind of video quality. A quick test to see if the camera is struggling would be to drop the video quality in the camera's video tab. Lower both the resolution and the frame rate, or just use one of the presets like we've got here. If the camera is still in a warning state, we'll need to take a look at the network between the archiver and the camera. Make sure there's nothing that would block the ports that we need to have open, such as a firewall or antivirus software. Make sure the NIC is working and on the latest drivers, and verify the switches and cabling between the two. Once we've found the culprit and rectified the situation, we should see the camera icon in white, and we can go back and take a look in the security desk for video. If we're still getting a waiting for signal message, we're going to move on to the last section. So alright, the last section that we're looking at here is of course troubleshooting the waiting for signal message when the camera is in an online state and the icon is white in the logical view, meaning the archiver can connect to it. The first thing we need to find out is which network we should be receiving the video feed from. To do this, find out which archiver the camera is assigned to and see which server the archiver role is running on. Next, open the network view and find the network that server has been assigned to. So in our case here, we have our camera here, the payroll department hallway. It's under the archiver that is cleverly called archiver. And when I go into the from the video section, I could actually click on the archiver, or I can see it from the system under the archiver role. Under the resources, I can see the server it's using is the Web2 server here, and from the network view I can find that under the head office network. Now if I go to that network and take a look under the properties section here, we can take a look at the capabilities and make sure that it's set to the type of traffic that that network can support. In the section below, take a look at the routes as well, and make sure the highest type of network traffic supported has been chosen between this network and the others on the system. To change the capability, highlight a route and hit the edit icon below. This will give you this section here, the pop-up window with the properties, and we can change the capabilities here. The next thing to take a look at is the configuration of the redirectors. From the media router role, go to the Properties tab to see the list of all redirectors that we have on the system. Click on a redirector and then click on the Edit button on the bottom of the screen to see the properties. We want to make sure the correct NIC has been selected under the multicast interface field here, and all the ports here are correct as well. Now we're going to move on to the workstation next, and in the general options of the config tool or the security desk, we want to make sure that we have the correct network and NIC selected under the network options. So this is the section down here. I just blew it up a little bit so we can see the network card that we're using, and in this case we're using a specific network that we're forcing it to, otherwise we can use auto detect. The auto detect is usually used for basically finding the closest network that it's on, but we can also force it to a specific network here using the drop down. Finally, the last place we want to double check the network configuration is on the camera itself. So under the video tab for the camera, we want to take a look at the network settings. Usually we can use the best available option here, but in some cases we may have multicast detected on the network but not fully supported. So this might cause it to choose multicast but not be able to get the traffic through the network in multicast. This would basically end up in a broadcast situation, which is never very good for your network. So from here we can try to choose a different connection type, from such as unicast UDP or unicast TCP, depending on the type of connections that are supported by the camera or encoder. So you may not see this exact same list for all cameras, you may have different options. It really depends on the hardware and what they support. Once we've taken a look at all these areas and made any changes required, go back to the security desk and try to reload the camera in a tile. If we still don't have a video stream in the tile, we're going to want to start taking a look at the components along the stream path, starting with the archiver. From the server hosting the archiver role, try to see if you can view the video stream from that machine in the security desk client application. So basically we're loading the security desk onto the same server that we've got the archiver role running on. If we can't see live video from the tile, take a look at the general options from the client application, either from the config tool or the security desk. So just once again, make sure the correct network and the correct NIC are selected, as we had done for our client workstation in one of the previous steps. If we still aren't seeing video from the security desk on the archiver, we need to make sure all the ports are open on this machine and nothing is blocking the video. We can take a look at knowledge base article number 660 for the list of inbound and outbound ports that need to be open. If all the ports are open but we still aren't seeing video, we need to check the archiver or if the archiver server is using multiple NICs. If it does, follow knowledge base article number 726 to make sure everything is configured properly. Now the knowledge base article references Security Center 5.0, but the configuration and concepts required here are still relevant and they basically haven't changed, so that's still a very good knowledge base article to take a look at. Now if we still aren't seeing video after checking the port and the NICs, we need to make sure the archiver has been recording video, or basically checking if it's been recording video as part of our troubleshooting steps. So take a look under the video archives folder to see if there's any video from this camera, or an easier method is just to run an archive storage details report. Now if we're not getting any recordings from the camera, like this is a good example here where we are seeing recordings, or we do have recordings like this, but there's no cameras of the same model that are providing video streams as well, we need to take a look at the hardware for a minute. So first, take a look if the hardware is on the supported device list that's available on the GTAP. If it's not, this model hasn't been tested and certified to work with Security Center and should be replaced with a supported device. If we can find the device in the supported devices list, we need to take a look at the firmware next. So we can check the firmware version the camera is on through the web page of the camera, of the video unit, or we can do it from the config tool and by clicking on the video unit itself, and it should have this under the identity tab. It should tell you the firmware version here. Now once we've checked that, we can click on the model name in the supported devices list, and this will bring up a window showing you the latest certified firmware for each release of Security Center. If the camera is on a lower version of firmware than the one listed, upgrade the firmware on the unit and see if that resolves the issue. You can do the same for the other cameras or encoders, if you have any others that are giving you the same problem, but I would recommend testing with one unit first and then applying the fix once it's been resolved for this unit. Now, as we mentioned previously, if the camera is on a higher firmware than the one we have listed, you could try the recommended firmware from the supported devices list, but please contact the support department first in order to make sure that there's no problems associated with downgrading the firmware for that particular model of camera or encoder. Now if you do have a working unit that's the same model number and it's on the same archiver that the camera that we're trying to get working is using, or on another archiver on the system, take a look at the firmware that's being used on that unit. If it is a different firmware, try applying that same firmware to the unit that's not working. Now at this point, once we've done a few things on the unit itself, especially if we've done anything with the firmware, it really would be a good idea to restart the video unit. So we can do this by doing a power reset, or we can go through the camera's web page, or from the commands at the bottom of the interface when viewing the unit in the video task. So here we have our unit selected. You should see this on the bottom. We can either reboot from here, or if we prefer to do it from the web page, we do have a button to connect to the unit's web page from here. Now we should also take a look at the release notes for the version of Security Center we're on, and for any if there's any future releases than the one we're on as well, to see if there's any known issues with this particular type of camera or encoder. So we may need to upgrade the version of Security Center or apply a service release to fix a common problem. At this point, if we're still getting the waiting for signal message from the client application running on the archiver server, we need to start looking at the archiver and the connection between the archiver and the camera. The first thing we can try to change is the traffic type used. So if you have everything selected to use multicast, try try to switch it over to use unicast UDP, for instance. We should do this from the network entity in the network view and the camera entity from the logical view. In the client application, from the general options, make sure it's connecting to the correct network here as well. If one type of traffic comes through and not another, we know there's something on the network that is blocking that particular type of traffic. We can also go into the video tab for the camera entity and try to change the compression used for the live stream. So most cameras have a few different compression types, such as H.264 or MJPEG, and we can just use the on-off sliders here to change the live stream to a different compression type in the stream usage section here. Now in some cases, the network or workstation hardware may not be able to handle a specific compression type. For instance, MJPEG streams send a lot of information over the network, which may be lost if the network does not have the capacity to handle that kind of load. If we still can't get video from any of the settings, changing any of the settings here, we'll have to take a look at the network components between the archiver and the camera. So take a look at the ports and make sure they're all open, specifically the ones in Knowledge Base Article 660, and make sure there are no firewalls or antivirus software that is restricting communication. Take a look at the physical NICs on the archiver and make sure that the drivers and windows are up to date as well. Any switches involved between the two should be verified as well, in case there's any built-in software that restricts access on certain ports. Now once that's been checked, we should also try to restart the server the archiver is running on. Now this really is a last step, since it will affect all the cameras associated with that particular archiver. Now if we're still getting a waiting for signal message, we should contact the support department to have a look. So all of that was for testing on the archiver server to see if we can get video on the security desk client that we have loaded from there. If we are able to see video from the archiver server, the next step would be to check the server the redirector is running on, assuming it's a different server than the archiver. If we're getting a waiting for signal message in the security desk tile from the redirector server, so in this case we've loaded the security desk software on the redirector server and we're checking the video stream, the first thing to check is the NIC and the network selected on our client, so that we're sure it's all set to the right one, like we've done in previous steps here. So check the network card and make sure we're on the correct network that we want to test here. The next thing we want to do is take a look at Knowledge Base Article number 660 again, and verify that all the network ports needed by Security Center are open and unblocked on that particular redirector server. Now once we're sure the ports are open, we need to consider if the server is using multiple NICs like we've done before. If it is, take a look at Knowledge Base Article number 726 and make sure that the server is set up to use the multiple NICs correctly. If we're still getting a waiting for signal message in the tile on the security desk that's running on the redirector server, the next few steps are the same as the last steps we did for the archiver server as well. So first, try to use a different network streaming method, like changing from multicast to unicast UDP. And then as well, try to use a different video compression type for the video stream. So change the live stream from MJPEG to H.264 or MPEG-4 or something like that. Now if there's no change to the problem after making those modifications, we need to check the network between the archiver server and the redirector's server. Now this is the same series of steps that we considered for a connection issue between the camera and the archiver. So first, make sure all ports are open on all network hardware and software. Check the firewalls and antivirus software. Make sure the NIC drivers are up to date like we mentioned. And of course, check any switches that are being used between these two servers. Now after all that's been verified, take a look at the software and see if an upgrade might be useful. If all else fails, we can open a case with the support department. Okay, so we're down to our last scenario here. So we can see video from the Security Desk client application running on the archiver server, and we can see it from the Security Desk running on the redirector server. So the last step here is to check the workstation. A good test would be to see if another workstation can see video from the camera, the same camera that we're getting the waiting for signal message on our client here, and that way we can isolate the problem. If we're not getting video on another workstation, we first need to make sure the NIC and network selected on the workstation are set correctly from the client's general options. Now we could have a situation where all the client applications here all have been set up with the wrong settings on all the workstations. So the initial configuration may have had the incorrect network or NIC card selected, and that would affect all the workstations. Now from here, take a look to see if we're getting video on the other workstations again, and if we are, we could have a specific problem with the one workstation that we originally encountered the problem on. So check the network ports on the specific workstation, so this is on the actual machine here, and make sure all the ports listed in KB660 are open and are not blocked. Now once we've verified that they are open or unblocked, or if we've had to unblock any of them on the workstation, take a look if the workstation is on a different network than the camera. So again, taking a look at the workstation, we've got we set our specific network. If it's set to auto detect, it will actually tell you which network it's connecting to here. And then on the unit as well, we go in the properties and we can see the IP address. So once again, as we mentioned before, using our head office as an example, we're connecting to this network. It's got this IP range, so 10.0.1, and the unit is using a 10.0.17 network address. So we can tell based on that they are not on the same network. Now, if they are on the same network, just make sure the problem isn't with the Security Desk application. We can try to switch to another monitoring task, or we can close the Security Desk application and reopen it. That would be a good way to refresh it and make sure the software is all up and running properly. If the workstation is on a different network, or if we started a new monitoring task and that didn't help, we're going to want to take a look at the network traffic configuration as we head for the archiver and the redirector servers. So as we had seen previously, try to switch to a different type of traffic, such as unicast UDP, and from there follow the steps we saw before to try to use a different compression for the camera. So try to switch from let's say H.264 to MPEG-4. Now if those don't resolve the issue, but we're only seeing the problem on this one workstation, we know it's most likely a problem between this workstation and the redirector server that it's contacting. We need to perform the network verification steps we had talked about before, and check the ports, the firewall, the NIC drivers, and other network components. In a situation where we can't see the video stream on all the workstations that are getting video from this same redirector server, try the previous steps on the other workstations, such as closing and reopening the Security Desk, and set the network traffic to a different type. Now if that doesn't help, we can narrow the problem down even more to the network equipment associated with the redirector server, such as the NIC or the switch that is used between the redirector and all the workstations. Now, as a very last step, of course, verify the Security Center software. We want to do that to make sure that everyone is running on the same version, and for instance, the directory server was upgraded, but one of the expansion servers was not, we're going to want to upgrade the software on the expansion server. Now, of course, using the latest version of Security Center may help as well, but at this point, we've pretty much exhausted everything here. So it really would be best to contact the support department and open a ticket, and they can help you out from there. Alright, so that's the end of the troubleshooting steps, and hopefully the end of any waiting for signal message you may have. In the next couple of days, we're going to post the video of the webinar to the GTAP, as well as any common questions and answers we received today. In the forum thread for the webinar, we're going to also put the link to the slides in PDF format, as well as a link to Terry's original document with a troubleshooting flowchart and sample images as well. If you have any comments or feedback on the webinar, we'd really love to hear them. When we close the session, or if you exit the webinar, you're going to be presented with a few very short survey questions. We'd really appreciate it if you could just take a minute to give us a little feedback on the webinar today. Now, if you think of anything you'd like to ask or have any other comments, you can leave those in the GTAC Tech Talk section of the GTAP forum. There's either a general section, or you can leave it specifically for whatever particular webinar. We do have a thread for each webinar in there. So we're going to leave the session active for about another 10 minutes or so. If you have any additional questions for us, go ahead and ask away. Now, I'll come back on and give you a warning before we close the session, but I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their support of the GTAC Tech Talk webinars over the last 4 years. From everyone on the Genetec side, I can honestly say it's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this every month, and we really hope we can continue doing this for another 50 more webinars. From myself and everyone at the Genetec Technical Assistance Center, I'd like to thank you very much for attending the webinar today, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you.